Welcome to the Ink to Film podcast, where we read the book and then see the movie. I'm filmmaker James Bailey.
And I'm writer Luke Elliott.
And here we go with another From the Vault episode. I'm sure you weren't expecting this, but...
How dare you, James?
Yeah. So, actually, Luke, you wanted to say why?
Yeah, it's my fault. So you might not even be able to hear it on the mic or not. I'm not sure, but I basically had some nasal surgery recently, opening up the airwaves, a deviated septum I've had since I was a kid, and I'm a little bit congested and just kind of like gunked up. So I went ahead and canceled the Macbeth movie episode that was going to be coming out this week because we had a guest scheduled to come on, and I just wasn't sure. So
yeah, we rescheduled, not canceled. Rescheduled.
Yes, we rescheduled it. Thank you. So that should be coming to you next week once I'm a little better. And we're excited for that still. Hopefully you stick around. Sorry for the delay. I'm also going to a retreat thing this week. Patrick Swinson runs the Rainforest Writers Retreat. He was on for our Station 11 coverage, and I go to that every year. So this just happened to be kind of a crazy time with a lot of stuff happening. So it ended up being easier to take off this week, but we will be coming back and doing Macbeth, and then we'll be following that up with our first Patreon quarterly poll project. So what we do now on Patreon is we collect a bunch of suggestions. So we have like an ongoing suggestion thread that I just created on there. People can comment anything they want us to consider. Anyone can comment. It's a public post on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/inktofilm. I think you have to make an account, but you don't have to pay. So just get on there and you can comment and you can like, most importantly, probably like other suggestions that you would most want to hear. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pull from that poll, I think, that list. And we're going to create our actual Patreon quarterly polls, which only patrons can vote on. So once it gets narrowed down. And right now, we're going to take our top 3 vote earners. So we're excited to do that. All of those sound really exciting to me. Very different, 3 wildly different projects. But whatever sounds best to you. And if you have a strong opinion, go sign up for Patreon. You can get on there and cast your vote. Even I think our lowest tier gets voting power. So
we're also here to tell you about this bonus episode that's coming back around now. So this is the 2012 Total Recall that we covered in this episode. And I listened to it a little bit. I listened back to the episode. And for a bonus episode, I thought that it was really fun. I enjoyed listening back to our thoughts, comparing it to the Total Recall with Arnold Schwarzenegger that we covered in the main feed. So it was
talking Philip K. Dick, who we've enjoyed covering multiple times, and I know we get into some science talk that is probably a little over our heads.
Yeah, right.
I remember I was making some very emphatic points, and I'm like, I probably need to be fact checked on this, but I'm pretty confident in the fact that the movie itself was not very well fact checked because there's some bogus stuff that happens in there, and we react to that. And if you like the sound of this, we have another bonus episode that is going to be exclusive to Patreon because this one is from like 2020, so this one's pretty old. And this new one is us reacting to The Winter Dragon, which is the pilot for a unreleased Wheel of Time show that had really shady stuff going on in the background as they were trying to like hold on to the rights and all this stuff. We watched that pilot, react to it, and talk about all the madness that went on behind the scenes. And it was actually really fascinating. And that one's going to be coming out only on Patreon. So another reason to get on Patreon, beyond just being able to vote on the poll.
All right. Well, we hope you enjoy this From the Vault episode. We'll see you next week.
We are covering Total Recall, the 2012 Len Grossman, is that his name? Lev Grossman? No, that's an author.
Len Wiseman.
Len Wiseman, thank you. Lev Grossman is an author. Unrelated to this movie. Len Wiseman, who is the director of the Underworld films. That's, I think, the only other thing I know him from. Married to Kate Beckinsale for a time. I know about that. But other than that, I don't know much about him. But yeah, his version of Total Recall, adapted from the We Will Remember It For You Wholesale short story by Philip K. Dick that we covered on the main feed for the pod.
And this movie made sure to reference that a few times. They said, we will remember it for you. We will remember it for you. Like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. It was like the marketing material for Recall within this 2012 version.
So I wanted to ask you, had you seen this movie before?
No, I had not seen this.
Okay, cool. So first time viewing. That's fun. I had seen it before. I went and saw it in the theaters when this came out because it looked like it was sort of my kind of movie. Like I was like, oh, it's kind of cyberpunky. It's got Colin Farrell in it, who like I've always been kind of a fan of, and I thought it was gonna be great. Kate Beckinsale, like I'm not saying she's like the greatest or anything, but I've always had a soft spot for her. She was one of my early kind of movie crushes, probably. Growing up. So, I was like, oh, yeah, sign me up for this movie. And then I remember getting kind of bored in the theater and kind of checking out. And I felt something similar happening to me in this movie, too. And I think it really starts to happen in like the third act of the movie.
Yeah.
And I was going to definitely, I want to get your take on it. I don't want to like bias you too much, but what were your thoughts on this movie?
Well, you're already hitting on most of what I felt. So going in, I kind of was going to be cynical about it and be like, oh, they remade it and all this stuff. But for the first like quarter to a third of the movie, I was like, oh shit, like maybe this is better than I anticipated.
Yeah.
And I was really enjoying, like, although I felt like, I felt like grounding Total Recall seemed like a mistake. I think like you need to lean into the weirdness, and they tried to ground it by, instead of using Mars, they had like two colonies and one, and like that was sort of a way to like make it seem more believable in a way, and the future tech.
Although I would argue that the scenario they set up is actually less believable than a Mars colony.
Yeah, the whole third act, the whole third act should have been.
No, well, yes, but I mean, the idea that it is easier to create a shaft through the core of the Earth to connect two places on the surface of the Earth.
I have a theory about why they did this. I think they really wanted a zero-G scene. Like
yes,
a zero
that is exactly what it is. They really wanted, because someone read a thought experiment where there's a lot of these out there about what it would be like to fall through the core of the Earth, and they thought that's really cool. I want to put a elevator shaft through the center of the Earth, and we're going to put it in our Total Recall movie for some reason, but it'd be really cool if we had that. And then like just madness ensues from that idea, because it's laughable to me that would, because like you even see them get on a train and go out into the like chemical wasteland, and it's like they're fine when they're on the train. So the idea that it would be easier to core through the insane density of metal at the core of the Earth and in unbelievable temperatures.
What do you do with the magma? What do you do with
it's also just like, I think they failed to grasp how far that would still be. Like the distance would still be incredibly far. Like they go across it in like a couple hours or less.
Yeah, or less, I think. I think it's supposed to be like 15 to 30 minutes or something. 15 minutes.
No fucking way.
Remember, he sets the timer, and then they travel
you're right. Yeah, and they're like on the other side in like 15 minutes. The speed in which it would have to be going would be incredible for that to be true.
Ludicrous speed. Plus, at the end of the movie, they're climbing out on top of that thing while it's traveling through the center of the Earth.
Well, you know what I bet, though? I bet that, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I bet that they looked at the thought experiment, and I bet that maybe it is like a free fall. If you were to be at a true free fall, that you would hit a certain speed, and then like I imagine they probably calculated it, and maybe you would get to that. But the problem is the speed we're talking about has to be incredible, and the idea that you could walk around on the outside of this thing at any point in time is laughable.
Yeah, and like I would have assumed like when they busted that window or opened the hatch or whatever, they would have gotten sucked out just due to like pressure and how quickly they're traveling.
Well, it's clearly there's air in the chamber, but whereas I feel like it would have to be a vacuum for this to work the way that they're describing it, and the air in the chamber would create like wind shear. It would be, you know what I mean? So it would be like trying to like stick your head out of a 747. Like it'd be
exactly, yeah. It's like what happens when you puncture a hole in a plane. They're traveling so fast. So anyway, let's jump back to the beginning and talk about some of this stuff.
There was some stuff that worked though. It's like that I hate, but like there's some good stuff in this movie too.
I mean, they decided to go where Total Recall is weird, quirky, and unique. They decided to go grounded, sci-fi, familiar cyberpunk. And don't get me wrong, the cyberpunk and the futurism looked good in the movie. I think a lot of the like the sets looked very nice.
It looked pretty good. I in some ways I think it looked better for me than I even remembered it looking. But I also feel like they went with a drab color palette that did not do them a lot of favors.
Well, it felt like generic action sci-fi. In a way. And it's like raining constantly.
Clearly inspired by Blade Runner, which is another Philip K. Dick adaptation, but even Blade Runner has more splashes of color that are more dramatic than anything you get in this movie. Yeah. In my opinion.
It's very gray. The movie's very gray and dark and moody and grounded.
And lens flares, man. What is with the fucking lens flares in every scene? And they'd have a great looking scene, but it would be totally washed out by like 5 lens flares. It was so weird.
It just, I don't know. I think there was this like futuristic, it looked futuristic to people because of, I guess, reflective.
You know what it reminded me of? The lens flares reminded me of Minority Report, another Philip K. Dick adaptation, which is like, I don't know if they're referencing that. And then the flying car scenes were also very Minority Report.
Yeah. I think that they took some of the charm of Total Recall and tried to update it and make it cool for the modern day. Make it like a Jason Bourne like action movie mixed with these sci-fi elements, and it I think it loses what Total Recall was. And that doesn't mean that it's like bad inherently just because they changed it so much. It's not really Total Recall anymore. But it's when they started to lose me was when I feel like they lost the thread. Was when when they got on the train to go out to the wasteland or whatever, and that the plot from there forward.
So the pace of the movie falls apart at that point too, right. I think.
Yeah, and so like that like the first portion I was on board with. I could get on board with. I was like, this is fun. Colin Farrell's great. I think he's a really great actor. I was excited to see everybody having fun. John Cho, by the way, as the guy running Recall, he was having the most fun. He was. I thought he was killing it. Yeah, he's great.
And the action sequences were like exciting. You know what I mean? I think they kind of dragged on a little too long at times. I was like, is this still the same sequence?
Well, like the chase scenes specifically. There are
lots of long chases. But there was a lot of exciting stuff that happened in them. And I thought they were, for the most part, well choreographed.
That's what I was going to say. The as soon as he's finished with Recall, like when he first is getting the Recall, Recall's messing with his brain, and then he jumps out of the chair, and then they're like, put your hands on your head. That fight scene is a great combination of camera work, choreography, like you said, and CG to blend some of the different takes and things like that. And just like it was very energetic. It was very exciting. I thought that it was impressive. I thought it was really impressive, and I enjoyed it for what it was, like an action Jason Bourne type over the top sci-fi scene.
Before we move away from it, I did want to mention I caught that he was reading an Ian Fleming novel when he was on when he was like on the train, or the fall thing, whatever it is, which is the creator of James Bond, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you have that reference to the spy, and like I was feeling it, man. I'm like, oh, I know where this is going, and I like these little clever references they're doing, and they mention about how, I knew a guy who wanted to be king of Mars, and then he says, I would like to go to Mars, and I'm like, they're playing with that, referencing the first movie, and I was trying to give it credit, I was really trying to like this movie, and I didn't hate it, but it's just,
yeah, agreed. Eventually. I think that's where I ultimately land on it. It was just like, it's fine, like, if the second half was better, if the second half was as good as the first half, I'd be much more on board, and I think it's a much more full and realized movie. But the other thing is, I think Total Recall was successful because of specifically tone, and then Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then the somewhat self-aware nature of it. And this was not self-aware. This was very serious. It was
Paul Verhoeven, right, which we talked about. He's the guy who made RoboCop. So if you haven't seen Total Recall, but you have seen RoboCop, if you've seen any of these movies, he also made Starship Troopers. Like, he has a very particular satirical style that is completely absent in this movie. It just is not present at all. It is not self-aware in that way. It's not trying to make a biting social commentary in that way, other than like colonialism bad, kind of, and we're going to have like Britain, the United Britain, and we're going to have the colony, which is basically in Australia. Which also is like weird because it kind of erases I guess the idea is all these other countries moved into them, but like it erases so many other cultures. I don't know. They're supposed to be multicultural, but it's just weird that we have Australia and Britain are the only places left, basically.
Yeah. Let's talk about the filmmaker a little bit, Len Wiseman, because you mentioned that he directed Underworld, which, I think you can see that sort of slick 2000s action movie, sexual tension, between a lot of the characters, taken seriously.
There was a movie that I am afraid to watch again as like a grown person. Okay. But I feel like I saw Underworld when it came out and was like, this movie's cool. I know it's not great, but it's cool. And I don't know if I would still feel that way or not.
It came at a period of time when, I was very much into it. It was, like I said, it was like sleek, sexy. It was fighting and all the it's just I think
kind of goth,
it's
which I was kind of
goth
into too.
Exactly, yeah. Especially for that time, yeah. And so I think that is sort of carried over here. Maybe take out the goth and you have sort of the
you have
the
similar
elements.
You have some of the same actors, so that helps.
Yeah, Kate Beckinsale.
Yeah. What's the name of the leader of the resistance?
It's Bill Nye.
Right, and he was he's the guy in Pirates of the Caribbean. What's his name? Davy Jones.
Yes, I think so. Yep.
Yeah. He's got the tentacle. That performance is great, regardless of what you say. The rest of those movies. And then he's in Underworld. Obviously, I think he's like one of the old vampires who had a pretty striking performance. He's in like Shaun of the Dead of all movies. Like he's in a ton of cool stuff. That.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. When I saw him, I was like, okay, we're just getting all the Underworld cast back together here a little bit.
Yeah, and also in this movie, we have Bryan Cranston as sort of the antagonist.
Right.
He doesn't show up in the flesh until the movie, unfortunately, starts to decline, in my opinion. But, a good presence. I was happy to see him in films, because he'd been so famous in Malcolm in the Middle and then Breaking Bad. And then to see him start to get a lot of movies is nice.
So I am a huge Bryan Cranston fan. He's been on podcasts where I've listened to him talk for hours, where he's like wise, and I just want to learn from this guy. And he's amazing in Breaking Bad and amazing in so many things he's in. It felt like he was in a different movie than everybody else a little bit in this movie. Like I think he was trying to evoke the main villain from Total Recall, the original film, and how like dickish that guy was and over the top. And like he was trying to do that like on his own, but like the rest of the movie wasn't that. So
right.
He felt like a really weird fit for me, and I did not really like his character's role in this movie.
Right. I think it had to do with a couple of things. I think he was like, ooh, paycheck, unfortunately. I think he was like, I can be the main antagonist of this big movie, and if it does well, I mean, that's huge, And I think he was going for it, and I also think that he's hamming it up. It's a big action movie villain. And he's like, exactly. I gotta be the most extra. Well,
and that would fit in a different kind of movie. Whereas this movie was like, I don't know, the tone was just slightly different, I think, than that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say it was performance alone. It was, like we said, not a ton of. Oh no, I'm sure part of it is character is written,
direction, all of that.
And then the other person we haven't talked about is Jessica Biel. Who's also so she's like. It's interesting because Jessica Biel, I feel like, hasn't been in anything in a long time, but it was nice to see her again. And I think they gave her character more to do than the role of the character in the original Total Recall.
In the original film,
she in the original film, she sort of has more to do, like as far as like running around and helping in the
fights. I agree.
And...
I would give the credit to this version of the character as being better. I think so. So I want to talk about Kate Beckinsale a little bit because actually her performance was a little uneven. But some of the best moments in the movie I would attribute to her, actually. I thought some of her action sequences were really great.
Right. Well, like I said, that chase scene between her and Colin Farrell in
multiple chase scenes, right?
Yeah. Well, the first one where they're jumping across the rooftops and chasing each other, like sliding down
when they
shafts.
fight in the apartment. Right. There was a couple. I wrote down both times. I was like, man, she loves to do these badass slides. She does it a few times. Where she does slides on her knees.
The slide on the knees to the face of Colin Farrell was particularly funny for me. I was like, I was like,
it's kind of funny. But there was actually a cool one later that I really liked. That wasn't as silly, but looked cool. There's a moment where they're going down in an elevator, and I think it was a camera trick, but it looked cool because it was convincing. He looks up through the like door opening, and he sees her running at the elevator.
Oh yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
And then the elevator goes down, and he sees her start a slide. And then it like turns and looks up, and she comes down through the roof of the elevator.
Right. Yeah.
Like she slid onto the elevator and down into it.
You think she's going to come through the gap if she can make it, but she can't make it in the gap, and then she still ends up shooting down through the roof.
Yeah. It looked cool, and it looked like it was all like one shot, which I don't know if it actually was, because I don't know. And maybe it was. I don't know.
Could have been like a whip pan.
They were able to mask it, even if there was a cut. It made it look convincing.
Exactly. So, there could have been like a whip pan where they were able to mask a cut, but either way, it's hard to do either way.
Yeah, and it looked cool. And like so and I think you have to sell her as sort of a a big bad for this movie to work. And I was surprised at how well it succeeded. I really liked the moments where she was walking with the robots, which I have my issues with the robots in general, but when she was using them for cover and stuff, I thought was cool. And how she was like stalking down the hallway, kind of hiding behind one, I thought looked great. But in general, I think the robots are sort of that is the PG-13 writ large problem, because this movie is PG-13. And they're like, well, instead of having him kill a bunch of people, we're going to put in robots, which you can do anything to, and it's fine. And no one, it's not bloody, so it's all good.
This idea of robots chasing them could potentially seem a little more dangerous because they're so precise. They're so, they don't get tired, all that kind of thing.
But at the same time,
it's like the iRobot. Yeah, it's the iRobot situation where you just have like masses of robots and they're getting killed constantly and everything. He was killing guys. I mean, he killed a lot of people when Recall first came after, when he was in Recall, and he killed like all those people to get out.
Yeah, he does kill some people, that's true. But even then, it's bloodless because it's PG-13. Yeah. Like the movie feels toothless in a way that is like inconceivable to me when you are adapting that movie.
Yeah, I mean, we saw people like the first scene, somebody's head is melting and it's very violent. Arnold Schwarzenegger actually is like, the eyes are popping out.
Yeah, his eyes are popping out of his head and you're like, what the fuck did I just see?
And I think that's a staple and like a hallmark of that movie. Like just how batshit crazy it is.
Yeah, and you get none of that here. And in fact, when it starts making some of those references later, like we see, we go to Dubstep Land and we see the three boobs. And it's like, I don't know, it just felt like tossed in, like, hey, here's a reference for you. You wanted to see it because you went and saw a Total Recall movie.
Right.
And then another reference was the woman who, when he gets caught in his disguise, they show the woman who looks just kind of like the woman that Arnold was disguised as. Then he ends up not being that. I don't know. It just felt weird. It was like, because that was such an iconic scene with the head opening up and the way it like peels apart. And instead they just did like a CGI hologram masking, which doesn't look nearly as cool.
Well, and he doesn't jump through the glass. In like he
jumps through some glass, but not the way that it looked in the scanner
like the
and everything.
The X-ray glass and everything. Yeah.
Did you notice that when he gets his like briefcase full of money, that did you see the face on the money?
Yeah, Obama on the bills.
Obama.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I like
honestly.
that detail.
Yeah, that's cool. There's some great CG like we've talked about. I really did think that it was impressive for the time. Even for 2012, I feel like I still go back and watch stuff from 2011, 2012 and see, more sparse CG. This was like, they really went for it. Huge landscapes, sprawling cities, a lot of the car stuff looked good. Even and some of the technology was interesting. The phone in the hand and then putting it up against a piece of glass.
Cool. I like that.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's kind of a cool technology. Would people like to have it attached to them? Their phone attached to their hands? I don't know.
In their bodies.
In their body.
Well, there's a lot of talk about these like sort of nanotech and like body modifications and stuff. So that is somewhere there where it's definitely potential that could be a thing. It looked cool. And I like sci-fi films that go for it, and introduce concepts like that and just try and be like, what if this fucking weird, technology existed?
What about the rope gun that you can like sling people around the room with and stuff when it wraps you up?
Yeah, that was cool. I like that too. I didn't know. I have no idea how it worked, but it looked cool.
That's the next non-lethal deterrent that you could potentially, stop people from committing crimes or something with, is just rope them up.
Mm-hmm. So, there was a moment where I think it's when he's talking to Jessica Biel's character and he's learning about his former life, and I think he's watching the video of himself, and he describes how he joined the resistance. He like joined the resistance as a secret agent or something, like he was against it, but then he learned because he met a woman. He's like, I met a woman and it changed everything. And my wife let out an audible groan when he said it. And I was like, yes, it's so true. Like I felt the same way. It was like such a weird, like it absolved him of having any actual like moral stakes in it. Instead, it was more like, I met a woman, so I changed my mind because of her, and like that was the only reason. Well, and it seems
like that's her. And then it's like, is that her reason for existing in the story? Was just
was to change the mind of a man,
right?
Yeah. Although it sets up this kind of like double triple cross thing that happens later. But in that moment, I was just like, oh, yeah.
I think this is just unfortunately the more forgettable version of this movie. There's something else that I had a lot of issues with, which was whereas Total Recall, the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger, would put you into a situation. So this is my example of a scene that played much better when in Verhoeven's version of the events, he goes to Recall, sits down in the chair. They're telling him everything's going to go great. He's going to become a secret agent. They're talking about the woman that he wants to dream about or whatever. And then they inject him with it. And then they're like, oh shit, something's going wrong. But in Len Wiseman's version of the events, as we're walking in, he's like, everything should be fine as long as you don't already have this implanted in you. And they're like already kind of like leading you with breadcrumbs to what's about to happen. Yeah. I like the idea of just dropping it on people when it's already happening, because it's so much more, I get the dialogue that John Cho gets to chew on and like give that performance and kind of set it up for people. But it does feel like hand holding a little bit when you're like,
yes, that's what it is. It's hand holding.
Yeah.
Because they already set it up with the dream of Jessica Biel. Like, they already set up that something else is going on so that if something went wrong, we would know why. Right. And it's weird because I feel like there's other points in the movie where it gets really complicated and they don't explain things super well. But in this moment, they kind of over-explained. Right.
And that was just I found myself being like, just stop telling us all this stuff. Like, just like have the events play out a little more and stop all the like exposition that people feel is necessary sometimes to make sure that nobody's lost along the way. And I don't know. I think sometimes it makes for more bland movies.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the memory stuff in this film, the way it sort of progresses throughout, how did you feel about sort of the twists and turns, and then like where we're left at the end with like, was he possibly dreaming, kind of question that you might have with Total Recall?
In this version of events, I feel like they in order to have one last shocking twist moment, they played their hand and made it so that it's not ambiguous, right?
Right. So he wakes up you're talking about when he wakes up in the medic chamber and Kate Beckinsale's there, but she's got the Biel face on.
She's got the mask on, and then
yeah.
That was their play. That was their moment to like have it be like, what really happened? Was it all just a dream? Was he actually, was he in recall? Was he not in recall? Did any of this really happen? I feel like because of that, they're saying, for a second, you're like, oh shit, was it all a dream? And then because she was wearing a mask and it was her and she's still trying to fight him or whatever, you're like, okay, it wasn't a dream at all. Yeah. They were just trying to trick us right here one time at the end.
Yeah, it was almost like, it's weird because I think there's a similar amount of tricks that happen as the original movie, but for whatever reason, they were harder for me to follow and kind of keep track of. He is a spy, or he was a spy that he thinks was a good guy, which the same thing happens in the original. Then he finds out that he was actually in on it with Bryan Cranston's character, which is similar to what happens in the original, right? Like, so he basically is double crossed by his own past self, which is such a cool idea. Like I think that's cool. Like, the person that I think I want to return to being is actually a shithead, and I don't want to be him anymore. I want to be this new person because that guy I don't like anymore.
It kind of reminds me of Looper a little bit, with like sort of like dealing with your past self and your future self, and like, how those two people have different goals and objectives and that kind of thing.
Okay, yeah, I need to watch that movie again. I don't remember exactly how it goes down, I'll admit. But yeah, I can see that. But anyway, and then at the end, he is sort of embracing his new self and saving the world, I guess, and he's saving the colony. But I didn't find there. He says like something at the end to kind of evoke the same feeling of maybe this could have all been a dream. But I think, there's like a voiceover that plays while he's sleeping or something. He's like remembering people saying things. But I was not left with the same ambiguity that they had in the original film at all. It felt very much like just a nod in that direction, but we're playing this straight. Like, this is the reality. This is what actually happened. And partly maybe it is because of the Kate Beckinsale thing that kind of confuses it. Even though it's not memory related, she has a mask on. But having that right there, I think, complicates that potential sort of ambiguity at the ending. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, another character that I was disappointed in, there was a character named Hammond, I think his name was, who helps him out He's this like other freedom fighter or something who knows him, and he saves him when he's about to get killed or get like memory wiped or returned
weirdly
to his original or whatever.
Again, seems kind of convenient. Like weirdly, like why why does he show up then?
And he saves him, but then he dies, and I'm not even sure how.
I think we're just supposed to think he gets shot in the scuffle,
I guess. There's just a scuffle breaks out, and then he looks over and he's laying on the ground, and then he checks his pulse and he's dead. I was like, that was weirdly convenient, I guess, if you didn't want to have to explain what was going on with that character at all.
Right. He helped out when the protagonist needed help, and then, he was killed off for emotional... I don't know, emotional motivation,
he never got
maybe
to talk
a little
to the
bit.
guy. It's
right.
so weird.
That's what I mean, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
You know what else I was definitely missing from this movie is... like all of the mutants, all of the colorful, interesting people that
the three-breasted woman doesn't make much sense if you don't have any of that.
Right. And it's like to have those people that I think that's supposed to be an allegory for, all different types of people. Whereas in this case, it's just basically all white people, right? Except for the one
There's a
black
few,
guy.
like there's definitely some, Asian people and some black people and stuff, but like they've all sort of been subsumed by white culture, it seems like, because they live in like Britain now, essentially, and Australia.
And I guess, I don't think that the mutants there weren't necessarily a ton of people of color within them anyway, but I think there was like a commentary being made there, right? Or like
Probably.
Somebody, like minorities of some kind that were like being oppressed and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it is messy, and I don't want to give them too much credit for it, but it was something that was there that was fairly absent from this one. I'll agree with that. So one scene I do want to touch on before we run out of time, I really liked it too, was when his friend shows up and has that kind of like mindfuck moment of trying to convince him that he's still dreaming. I thought that scene was tense. I thought that scene worked well. Colin Farrell did some actually pretty good acting with his eyes and his confusion. Like he wasn't saying hardly anything, but you could tell he was really struggling with like, who do I believe? Do I believe Jessica Biel right now? That's not the character's name, but do I believe her? Do I believe my friend? He's saying things. He just gave her the gun. He seems like so cavalier about it. Like it was an interesting, like, will he, won't he believe him scene that I of course knew would end in him not believing him. But I guess I didn't quite get the final beat of the scene where in the original film he sees the sweat and that's what makes him feel like it's real. Mm-hmm. Here, I didn't quite understand what the triggering moment was for him to decide, other than he just makes a decision, I guess. Kind of.
Yeah, I agree. It wasn't like a realization. It was like sort of just like a fuck it.
Yeah, I'm just going to shoot this guy now.
Like, yeah.
But all that being said, I still thought the scene was good. It was one of the highlights. I thought it was tense. They were using the lens flares a lot in that scene, but I thought they were doing it on purpose because I think it was trying to imply that like maybe this isn't real. Maybe this is a dream with all the lens flares going on. And when he was like, he was constantly like squinting, trying to look outside, and he like couldn't really see. And I felt like it made it feel like a surreal moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I thought that was all pretty cool. I like that scene. But yeah, the third act, which we both touched on, I think it really gets bogged down. The action goes really, really long. It feels like the third act was half the movie. I don't know if that's true or not. It just felt that way.
Yeah.
I remember checking the time and going like, well, I still have 45 minutes left in this movie or something crazy when it felt like the movie was almost over. Right. And there was so much of him like crawling around on this thing and like setting a bomb and doing some zero-G fights and then climbing up on top of it in a way that didn't make any sense at all. Then he gets in like a long fight with the helicopter shooting people and Bryan Cranston hamming it up.
Right, and then that should be the ending, maybe like a scene after that. And then we get the twist again of him fighting Kate Beckinsale for a little bit longer.
Yeah, in the like, ambulance. Yeah, but that whole thing, it just like, I don't know, I felt really, I was kind of confused as to like how everybody knew what was happening in the colony. This is what I was talking about where there was some confusion for me, and maybe I just had checked out and wasn't paying attention enough, but like I was trying to, like I was legitimately trying to pay attention, and I didn't quite understand how everybody in the colony knew that there was a threat so that they could cheer when he blows up the elevator. And then there was also people saying like it's a symbol of our oppression, like it's bad, this elevator, but it's called the fall or whatever. But it was never explained. Like I wanted to like have a character say why it is oppressive.
They talked a little bit about how like, you know, it was like it represented like monotony, day to day traveling, like Colin Farrell's character in the beginning talked about it basically.
But that seems like a lame reason for an entire society to hate the thing, because it's like, oh, it's boring. What? It's a symbol of our oppression because it's so boring.
We all hate boring things.
Yeah,
Everybody
we just fly through the middle of the earth and go to 0G, and you know what I mean. That's so boring. Ugh.
That's so boring.
What? Doesn't make any sense. I really like. Okay, maybe the way it provides a tool for the United Britain, whatever alliance to oppress the colony is through this thing. That seemed to be like built in, but they never explained how that works. And I was curious. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of a geek for world building, and this world didn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think that was one of my major problems too. Is it's like I just didn't believe it. It felt like a fake situation. It felt overly simplified. They're like, oh, we're just gonna have two places that are connected by one shaft. That's all that's left on the earth. Don't worry about it. And one's bad, one's good. And like, that was it.
Right. When they first went out to venture into the territories that weren't one of those two areas, I was excited about it, but then it ultimately didn't lead to anything really that great. So I thought it was cool that I was like, oh, cool. We get to see like other things besides these two places, and we can see the resistance and all this stuff, but it didn't really amount to all that much.
Yeah. There was almost no body horror in this, kind of moments. And other than when he pulls the phone out of his hand, but even that, it wasn't that bad. Whereas, like, can you imagine a scene where he has to pull the phone out of his hand in the original Total Recall? How that would have looked?
Yeah. There'd be like a rat pulling it out of his hand or something.
Well, I mean, like, remember when he pulls the fucking tracker out of his nose? Remember how that looked? Like,
yeah.
So anyway, this is my point. It's like it was trying to be an adaptation of the original short story, but it had the problem of we want to appeal to all the fans of the original film, knowing that that's the more popular version. But it failed to do that big time. And it almost would have been better if they hadn't even tried. And they just said, like, we're just going to adapt the short story in a new way. And we're not even going to try and reference all the shit from the original film, because then you get into this trouble, I think, of trying to have certain call outs to particular moments and having them be just like watered down shitty versions of them.
Yeah.
This movie doesn't seem to have any discernible message that I could really gather other than colonization bad, maybe. And it does. If that's the message, it's also done poorly. Yeah.
I'm not really sure either. Again, maybe it's like just goes back to the roots of the story. It's a wish fulfillment story, especially for this time period, the sort of secret agent, but then they turned it into like Jason Bourne action movie mixed with it's Kate Beckinsale.
Maybe just in my rewriting of the film, that's kind of what I'm thinking in my head of like, if I'm mentally rewriting it, I'm like, if you're going to do something really different, like have a reason, have something you're trying to say. And this movie didn't really have anything to say other than we wanted to have a bunch of fun action sequences. We wanted to dress it up like Total Recall. We wanted to do homages to Blade Runner and Minority Report and collect a paycheck. And I don't know, that was, it felt kind of lame. It felt kind of like they didn't go far enough or push themselves far enough to find more compelling ideas. And ultimately, it's a movie that not a lot of people remember.
Right, and unfortunately, you can just point to it. Kind of fits in the group of uninspired sort of generic sci-fi, even though there's a lot in there that you could pull from, and it could have been a much better movie. Unfortunately, just the sum of all its parts just kind of embodies exactly what I think of when I think of like sort of a generic sci-fi film.
Yeah. Well, and let me say again, like, this movie has so many pieces that this should be a movie I love. It really wouldn't have had to have been that good for it to be a movie I really enjoy, because there's so much surrounding it is the kind of shit I'm into. Like, it speaks to me. And the fact that it still failed to be a movie that I enjoyed is a pretty damning indictment, I think. Although I'll admit there are some decent parts that people do like this movie. Like, I'm not shitting on it for you. Just for me, there was parts that just didn't land, especially in the last half of the movie or so.
Right.
But all right, I think we should wrap it up now. We hope you're enjoying our projects we're doing on the main feed. I know we're trying some different kind of stuff right now, but hopefully everybody's enjoying it. And we'll see you next time.